The fat thug, his body covered in patchy tattoos, took a long drag from his cigarette and muttered through the smoke. "Damn it! Hot as hell!" A moment later, he got to his feet and blew a mouthful of smoke toward the woman sitting on the floor. Instantly annoyed, she snapped, "Don't blow smoke at me! My clothes will stink!" Hearing that, he looked at her with utter contempt and spat back, "Shut your mouth, bitch!" The floor was covered in filth, spit, cigarette butts, and all kinds of disgusting trash scattered everywhere. It felt suffocating, like the cigarette smoke alone could kill you, and the ground was practically soaked with spit. At that moment, Taesung looked especially vicious and twisted as he said, "Oh, is this your cigarette?" The woman immediately shot back, "What the hell? That was my last one." The second he heard that, his expression turned ugly, and he coldly replied. Then his eyes slowly shifted toward Hyung-suk, and the look on his face was downright disturbing. In that instant, it was obvious. Hyung-suk was in real danger. After a while, the fat thug clamped the cigarette between his lips again and, in a threatening tone, barked, "Hey, you monkey! If a teacher shows up, use your body to block him." Beside them, the woman kept struggling to get away from the smoke, grimacing as she complained, "Ugh, the men's restroom reeks!" Then he casually took the cigarette into his hand. In a foul mood, Taesung stepped forward, his face twisted with disdain as he glared at Hyung-suk and sneered, "What, are you ignoring me now?" The moment Hyung-suk saw that expression, fear took over. He had been forced to crawl on the filthy floor for quite some time, his body aching, his limbs numb. All he could do was mumble incoherently, broken sounds slipping out of him. Taesung tilted his head, staring at him in confusion before snapping impatiently, "What the hell? You're too slow! Do Pikachu!" Hyung-suk immediately switched, desperately squeaking out, "Pika, Pika!" Unable to bear it any longer, the woman nearby finally shouted, "Hey, stop it all!" Without saying a single word, Taesung suddenly lifted his leg and kicked straight at him. Hyung-suk was already terrified, and the force of that kick slammed directly into his face. The pain was overwhelming. Taesung sneered, "Is that the best you can do?" Meanwhile, Hyung-suk kept crying out, "Pika, Pika!" But inside he felt nothing but disgust and humiliation. Then suddenly, a stream of liquid burst out. It was urine. His face instantly turned pale with shame. Taesung then shoved his face straight into the urinal. Leaning down, he stared at Hyung-suk and coldly warned, "Don't let a teacher catch you." Then he pressed even harder, forcing Hyung-suk's face deeper into the toilet, twisting it painfully. "Now do an elephant," he ordered. Hyung-suk immediately obeyed, letting out pathetic boo, boo sounds. From the side, the woman's voice rang out again in frustration. "This is insane. I haven't even introduced myself yet, and I'm already part of this bastard zoo." Back in the classroom, everyone had already returned to their seats, though a few troublemakers, completely fearless, were still lounging around carelessly. Not long after, the fat thug walked back into the room as well, grinning as if nothing had happened. Then, without warning, he raised his fist and slammed a heavy punch into Hyung-suk's body. The pain shot through him instantly. "Boom," he mocked, forcing Hyung-suk to make a sound in response. The pain was unbearable, far beyond anything Hyung-suk could endure. It felt like his entire body was being crushed. But then what was that? Taesung casually rubbed his shoulder and said, "When you throw the first punch, you aim like this. One hit and they're done." The skinny guy beside him laughed. "Whoa, he's down already." At that moment, Hyung-suk's entire body throbbed with pain. He could barely even breathe. Right after that, Taesung turned back to him and ordered coldly, "Get up, Pikachu." Terrified, Hyung-suk's whole body broke out in a cold sweat as he trembled and weakly answered, "Pika." The group burst into laughter, all eyes fixed on him. What an idiot. "Ha ha! Oh my god, he's actually Pikachu." Then, from somewhere else in the room, another voice chimed in. "Wait, is Hyung-suk Taesung's Pokemon now?" Taesung smirked and replied, "You want to see?" At that moment, a terrifying thought flashed through Hyung-suk's mind. 100,000 volts. Hearing those words, his entire body began to shake uncontrollably. "Pikachu, 100,000 volts!" They laughed. "Ha! This is insane!" Completely losing control, Hyung-suk slowly dropped his hands to the floor, preparing to do exactly what they wanted. At that point, he was no longer even human in their eyes. He had truly become Pikachu, repeatedly crying out, "Pika, Pika," while the others continued laughing and joking as if it were all just a game. The overwhelming humiliation made Hyung-suk's body shake uncontrollably. I just want to die, he thought. But the others kept staring at him, laughing and mocking, calling him an idiot. What hurt even more was the way they looked at him so casually, as if this was completely normal. Taesung burst out laughing, ha ha! And the skinny guy nearby immediately joined in, calling out, hey Taesung, honestly, if I was stronger... Then the skinny guy made a suggestion. Lend me your Pikachu for a bit. The fat thug frowned. What for? Hearing that, Hung-suk's mind spiraled into panic. He had no idea what twisted thing they were about to do to him next. No. The skinny guy smirked and added, you know, today's someone's 100-day anniversary, right? Suddenly a thought flashed through Hung-suk's mind. Why can't I fight back? Even once. He braced himself against the floor, breathing heavily, his whole body trembling uncontrollably. Yet even now, all he could do was question what. Then they turned him into nothing more than a pack animal, forcing him to carry a bouquet of flowers on his back as he crawled forward. Everyone who saw him burst out laughing. Ha ha! You idiot! How do you even live like this? Hey, where's Charmander? Along the way, Hung-suk could only keep whimpering. Pika! Pika! It wasn't until he finally reached the destination that he was allowed a brief moment of rest. Here it is! Class 4. The moment he entered, everyone inside turned to look at him, their eyes lighting up with amusement. What the hell? Why is this fat guy crawling on the floor? Startled, Hung-suk looked up at the girl in front of him. She didn't look pleased at all, as she frowned slightly. What do you want? His mind wasn't even there anymore. He could only think about one thing. My underwear, it's about to... His exhausted body was drenched in sweat as he panted heavily. Taesung told me to show you this. Curious, the girl asked. Show me what? At that moment, everyone in the room fixed their eyes on him, judging him. Then, with trembling hands, he lifted the bouquet and held it out to her. Happy 100-day anniversary! 100,000 volts! His mind had gone completely blank. At that point, he could only surrender, as if nothing else mattered anymore. And at that exact moment, Hyung-suk suddenly let out a fart. The entire classroom fell into an awkward, horrified silence. The girls stared at him with disgust written all over their faces. When it was over, his face turned bright red with embarrassment. Oh my God! Someone blurted out before another voice awkwardly added, Wow! The girl looked at him with a hint of arrogance and said, I won't tell Taesung, so don't do something like that again. You're really pitiful. But more than being humiliated in front of a girl, what hurt Hung-suk the most was realizing he felt grateful for her shallow pity. Even then, his eyes remained fixed on the tight skirt she was wearing, unable to look away. By the time he was heading home, the sky had already gone dark. After an utterly exhausting day, Hyung-suk finally made it home. Mom, is the ramen ready? I feel dizzy. His voice called out weakly from... Hearing his mother's voice, he walked over and saw a pot of ramen steaming hot in front of him. Ha! But in the next second, he suddenly snapped at her. What is this? I told you to crack an egg into it! Even so, he reluctantly picked up his chopsticks and started eating. This is why I'm fat. From the kitchen, his mother glanced over and said, It doesn't taste good, does it? But in the very next moment, a voice rang out. It's delicious. After finishing the meal, Hyung-suk hesitated for a moment before finally speaking up. Mom, can I transfer school? His mother, who had been washing the dishes, froze and turned to him in surprise. Transfer schools? Hearing that, Hyung-suk began to tremble, stammering, Yes, the other students are all so good at studying, but my grades aren't, so I... She cut him off gently. Son. Her voice suddenly changed, heavy with something unspoken. It took me a long time just to find a stable place for us to live. Her expression darkened with sadness. There's nowhere else this cheap. I'm sorry. Hearing those words, it felt as if Hyung-suk's entire world collapsed in an instant. His face stiffened as he listened, and she added softly, And if you transfer, you'll be far away from your friends, won't you? At that moment, the faces of his bullies flashed through his mind again and again. Why is it always me? Trying to hold himself together, Hyung-suk clenched his fists so tightly his hands went stiff. But in the end, he couldn't hold it in anymore. He suddenly shouted, Damn it! His anger finally exploded. I said I want to study. What do friends have to do with anything? Startled, his mother looked at him in shock. Son, what are you doing? Only then did he realize he had just said that to his own mother. But even so, he kept shouting in anger, Is it my fault we're poor? desperately trying to act strong in front of her. Then, unable to contain his anger, he lashed out and slammed his fist hard against the door. In that moment, the frustration inside him only grew stronger. "What have you ever done for me?" His mother's face turned pale and strained as she looked at him, shaken by his words and actions. To her, he now looked like a frightened, out-of-control child. After a while, his fury finally burned itself out. He collapsed to the floor, his entire body trembling uncontrollably. Then, as if it were inevitable, he broke down in tears, sobbing in regret over what he had just done. "Mom, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. I've been getting bullied. I'm sorry, Mom." After hearing his confession, his mother fell silent, lost in thought. She sat there in the room without saying a word, while Hyung-suk felt like absolute trash, like the worst kind of person. Morning came again. He still had to go back to school, but the moment he got close, a thought crept in. "I don't want to go." But there was no turning back now. For Hyung-suk, it was all going to start again today. He glanced down at his hand, still bruised from punching the wall yesterday. It still hurts. Suddenly, he noticed two girls behind him staring at him, making him feel awkward. This is the hand of a real man, he thought. Then he quickly walked into the school, a strange idea crossing his mind. What if my punch is But as expected, the image of the bully leader appeared in his mind again, reminding him that no matter what, he could never defeat Tae. For a brief moment, he even forced a smile, imagining how great it would be if he had been born with real fighting talent, and maybe even ended up with a beautiful girlfriend. Then suddenly a voice came from behind, sending a chill down his spine. "Hey, pig!" In an instant, all his thoughts and courage vanished, replaced only by cold sweat dripping down his body. From the dark corner, a voice rang out again, cold and mocking. "Hey, pig!" The two guys who always bullied him were sitting together, repeatedly calling out, "Pig, get over here! Come on, crawl like a pig!" Hyung-suk's mind went blank. Terrified, he pushed his way through the crowd of students as he heard them counting down. 5, 4. Even this early in the morning, it had already started again. And after a moment, he finally made it over to them. The fat one sneered, "Lose some weight, you really look like a pig now." The skinny one sitting nearby smirked and added, "Yeah, you too." Then the guy took a drag from his cigarette and stepped closer. "First period's PE, right? Get ready." Hyung-suk forced himself to look eager, but deep down, he knew even the gym equipment would be completely under Taesung. His face turned pale with fear as he stammered that he would just put it on the table. In his mind, he remembered the lie he had told his mother, that he had lost it. And back at the office, a voice suddenly spoke up the moment they returned, calling out, Hyung-suk's mother looked visibly shaken, her body trembling as she heard the man ask, "Why so sudden?" She hesitated, unwilling to explain, and quietly replied, "Yes, I'm sorry. I've never come before, and it seems I may have been too careless." After that, the man on the other side fell silent for a long moment. A strange box was brought out, and the man spoke reluctantly. "Ma'am?" His expression stiff and unwilling. He set down a stack of papers and said, "It seems no school is willing to accept a transfer student with grades this low." Then he looked up. After that, his gaze slowly swept over her from head to toe, sizing her up. Then he added bluntly, "And it would cost quite a lot of money as well." Back at school, the fat guy was now playing around happily with a ball he had just snatched away, tossing it around like it was all a game. At that moment, Hyung-suk was overwhelmed with fear. He knew exactly what he was about to face. Suddenly, a ball came flying straight at him, forcing him to crouch down helplessly. The group burst into laughter, mocking him. "Ha ha! Look at that idiot dodging! What? You think you're special?" His whole body began to tremble uncontrollably when suddenly a voice called out, "Hey!" The bully slowly walked toward him and sneered. "Didn't I tell you not to dodge?" His voice dropped colder as he added, "What? You got a death wish or something?" Hyung-suk was terrified. How am I supposed to just stand there and take it? At that moment, another voice rang out. A strange-looking guy stepped forward, grabbing the ball as he laughed. "Ha ha, my turn now. Let's see some Mexican-style kicks. Look at that nose." The girls sitting nearby yawned and muttered, "What are they even doing?" "I don't know. Looks like they're taking turns kicking the ball at his face. Hey, don't do that." The guy took his stance, lining up the shot perfectly. Just as he lifted his leg to kick, a female student shouted, "I'm going to report you." He barked back, "Shut up, you idiots!" In his mind, all he could hear were their excitement. Then he grinned and said, "Let's go." From outside, cheers started to rise. "Now that's what I'm talking about!" Hung-suk's face twisted in dread. I might die. Instinctively, he ducked down, thinking, if that hits me? And just like that, the ball came crashing down toward him. But the so-called soccer genius had already calculated everything. The ball shot straight at Hung-suk, even as he ducked. In an instant, it slammed directly into his face, leaving him no chance to avoid it. Ha! It was a perfect strike, one he could do nothing but take head-on. Hyung-suk's entire body was thrown backward as pain exploded through him. In that moment, the pain was overwhelming, worse than the sound of his glasses shattering. The bullies cheered in excitement, shouting, "Someone pick him up!" Even the fat guy's expression began to change. But what terrified Hung-suk even more was realizing Taesung had just lost his bet. Pain surged through his entire body as the insults rained down again. "Pig!" In his mind, only one thought echoed, "I'm dead." Then the bully stepped forward, grabbed him by the collar and sneered, "So my kick was easy to dodge, huh?" In that moment, Hyung-suk could only stammer, I'm sorry." Suddenly, the girls started shouting from the side, "You perverts, stop it!" But he snapped back angrily, "Shut up! I just lost money because of this." His grip tightened even more, squeezing the life out of him. Desperate, Hung-suk blurted out, "Taesung, I'll pay you back. I'll give you my money instead," thinking of every last bit of his savings. At that, Taesung's expression finally eased a little. He looked at him and said, "Oh?" Hung-suk awkwardly scratched his head, forcing a nervous smile. "It's my fault you lost money. I don't know what to do." His voice faltered, his face stiffening as panic set. Before he could react, a slap came crashing across his face. The bully snarled angrily, "Look at this bastard." Hung-suk froze in shock. "Huh?" Without hesitation, the bully struck him again. "What, you pitying me now?" Still dazed and confused, Hung-suk could only let out a weak, trembling sound. Another slap followed immediately, snapping his head sideways as his vision spun uncontrollably. He looked toward the crowd, his face twisted in pain and humiliation. All he saw were bystanders standing there, doing nothing. And the last thing he caught before what he saw next was his mother rushing toward him. The moment he realized it, shock froze him in place. Then her voice rang out, loud and furious, "You bastards!" Hyung-suk's eyes widened in disbelief as he stared ahead. And just like that, his mother had stormed into the school, her anger blazing. The entire school fell into a sudden silence until her voice broke through it again from behind. "Hung-suk, are you okay?" Seeing her appear in a place like this, he grew flustered, stammering, "Mom, why are you here?" The fat bully's expression instantly turned sour as he looked at her. Meanwhile, Hung-suk's mother, still burning with rage, shouted, "You bastards! How dare you lay a hand on Hyung-suk!" Yet he still tried to put on an innocent act. The group grew visibly awkward, glancing at each other in silence. His mother rushed over, gently stroking his head with trembling hands. "Oh my God! Look at his face!" Seeing her pain, Hyung-suk became even more flustered, stammering, "Mom," his heart sinking with dread. The gossiping girls nearby watched the scene unfold, giggling among themselves. "Ha! What is this? That's his mom, right? Wow, this is getting interesting." In that moment, fear gripped him even tighter as he looked from his mother back to the bullies. One of them shouted, "What, you ran to your mom?" Trembling, he could only shake his head and whisper, "No." Seeing her son like that, his mother could barely hold back her anger anymore. But the bullies kept making excuses. "Man, we were just playing around." Hearing that, her expression hardened even further. "Playing?" In the next instant, his mother lunged forward, repeatedly striking Taesung as she lashed out, "You call slapping someone a game? You little bastard!" Standing behind her, Hung-suk grew even more panicked. "Mom?" The atmosphere turned painfully awkward. Taesung scratched his head, glancing around, while the girls nearby watched with obvious excitement, whispering and laughing. "Ha! What is this? Should we post this online?" Hearing those words, Hyung-suk's face burned with even deeper embarrassment. Seeing his mother grab Taesung by the collar, her anger blazing as she demanded justice. "Come with me to see a teacher. Who do you think you are, hitting my son? What's your name?" Afraid things would spiral out of control, Hyung-suk rushed forward. "Mom, stop!" But she refused to let go, her expression still filled with fury. He stepped closer, pleading again, "Mom, please stop," but was as if his words had no effect at all. With no other choice, he shouted at the top of his lungs to stop her. "Mom, you're turning me into a laughingstock." Only then did she realise that in trying to protect her son, she might have gone too far. She quickly let go. The students gathered around, staring at her with curiosity, and in that moment it hit him. He had just hurt the only person in the world who was truly on his side. Without hesitation, he hurried forward, lowering himself as he faced Taesung. "I'm sorry, Taesung." And in doing so, he made a painful realization. He was now shielding the very person who had hurt him. Seeing that her actions hadn't changed anything for him, her expression slowly fell, a deep sadness settling over her face. Hung-suk looked at his mother and quietly said, "Mom, you should go home." His fists clenched tightly as a bitter thought hit him. "I'm the worst piece of trash here." On the way back, everything around him seemed to fade into darkness, as if the world itself had dimmed. But when he looked up at his familiar house, the lights were still on. Overwhelmed with guilt, Hyung-suk dragged his feet forward step by step, then suddenly stopped. I don't think I can go home, even though I'm starving." Glancing at the mailbox, stuffed with identical letters, he knew exactly what they were. More debt notices. He didn't even want to. His expression grew even more uneasy as guilt crept in. Those glasses. His mother had saved for so long just to buy them for him. He quietly slipped inside like a thief, his only thought being to hurry back to his room and eat something. But just then, a voice suddenly called out, catching him completely off guard. "You're back?" Startled, he turned and saw his mother sitting in the corner and awkwardly blurted out, "Mom, have you had dinner yet? Ha ha!" Hung-suk glanced over. His mother sat there on the mat, still wearing her gentle expression as she said quietly, "We need to talk." He slowly stepped closer, looking more awkward than ever, as if he didn't know where to put himself. Now sitting beside his mother, the silence between them felt unbearably heavy. Fear filled his chest. He had no idea what decision she was about to make. What is she going? At last she spoke. "Hyung-suk." He looked up, startled. Then she continued calmly, "Transfer schools." Caught completely off guard, he didn't know how to react, only managing a faint, confused, "Huh?" She looked at him with deep affection, her eyes soft with regret, as if blaming herself for not being there enough because of work. But then he frowned, confused by her words. "You said you wanted to focus on studying, that friends didn't matter, right?" A thought flashed through his mind. Why is she suddenly saying this? Still speaking gently, full of warmth and care, she said, "You told me you wanted to focus on studying, that friends didn't really matter." In that instant, it felt like everything had been laid bare, including the truth about the bullying. A chill ran through him. She knows. At that moment, all the humiliating memories came flooding back. No matter what he endured, he had forced himself to endure it all just to survive at school, pretending not to notice, pretending it didn't matter. Then, for the first time, she smiled softly at him. "I'll take care of the expenses," she said gently. "Trust me, just transfer schools." And suddenly, in his eyes, it was as if a path of light had opened ahead of him, guided by his mother's words. A storm of conflicting emotions overwhelmed him. Even though his mother had no money and was struggling on her own, part of him still wanted to run away. If he left, he'd never have to face that bastard Taesung again. "I'm sorry, Mom. I just want to leave after everything." At that point, he could no longer hold himself together. Tears had already begun to fall. The more he tried to suppress it, the harder it became. In the end, he broke down completely, sobbing like a child as his mother's words sank in, tears streaming down, and he looked utterly miserable. Yet somehow this felt like the first moment he was truly beginning to live again. He thought of the mailbox filled with debt notices he had never even opened. Crying uncontrollably, he choked out, "Mom, my glasses, I'm sorry." But she remained as gentle as ever, softly telling him, "You're grown now. Don't cry." In that moment, he hated himself for pretending not to understand, for running away. Outside, the sky seemed clearer than before. He forced a small smile and said, "Mom, you really didn't have to come. You've already done so much for me. I'll take care of myself. I'll eat properly and focus on studying. I'll be fine on my own. Heh, that's enough, Mom. Thank you." By the car, she saw Hyung-suk off as he prepared to start over at a new... He was still flustered, only managing a few simple words. "Yeah, I'm here already. Don't worry, Mom. Heh." Bathed in bright light, he tried to sound cheerful. I'll call you later. Sitting in the car, holding a bun in his hand, he chewed absent-mindedly, thinking, a cheap vocational high school, whatever. As long as I can go somewhere, it's enough. In this moment, he wanted to start over. He sat there quietly imagining a better future ahead. This time, I'll make lots of friends. And just like that, he chose to run away instead of fighting back. After some time, he finally arrived at the place where he would be studying. He walked slowly along the quiet road like he had entered some isolated village. At last, he reached his destination and let out a small, relieved breath. This is it! It was a small village lined with old, worn-down houses packed close together. Looking at it, he couldn't help but think. Some of them looked like they could collapse at any moment. And yet, strangely, he felt happy. For the first time in a long while, there was a sense of freedom he had never... A middle-aged woman stepped out, dressed simply. He greeted her politely. "Hello, ma'am." It seemed she had never seen him before, because she looked at him in surprise. Watching two dogs playfully nuzzle each other, he couldn't help but smile and softly muttered, "What a beautiful kind of love." Looking down the open street, he realized he was completely alone out here. Even the rough, uneven road beneath his feet somehow felt wonderful. For the first time, it felt like he had been given a second chance at life. Smiling to himself, he said, "No one knows me here. I don't have to be afraid of tomorrow anymore." And in that very moment, he finally made up his mind. He was going to change. Like a larva that had waited 7 long years, he was finally ready to emerge as a cicada. After everything he had endured, he had finally made it this far. This was the moment he would truly emerge, just like that cicada. The city around him grew more and more lively, just like his heart, surging with a single, unwavering thought. I'm going to change. Rows of houses stretched along the streets, each one different from the last. He stepped into a barber shop, where a neatly dressed barber looked up at him and said politely, "Welcome in." Hung-suk had never been anywhere this fancy before. The question caught him off guard. "What kind of haircut would you like?" the barber asked. Flustered, he stammered, "Huh? Oh, right, a haircut. Wow, this place is amazing." The barber set his scissors down and stepped forward with a friendly smile. "Please, have a seat." Watching his expression change so smoothly, Hung-suk couldn't help but feel excited. This strange little shop. Somehow, The barber then suggested a rather unique hairstyle. "How about a 2-block cut?" he asked. Hung-suk had never even heard of it before and blinked in confusion. "What is that?" The barber quickly explained. "It's a style where the sides are shaved or cut very short, clean and neat. A lot of celebrities wear it." After hearing the explanation, Hung-suk hesitated for a moment before awkwardly replying, "Then, I'll go with that, please." As he spoke, he couldn't help but think, "Celebrities, huh? Ha!" Seeing how flustered he was, the barber could only sigh inwardly. In an instant, the barber's demeanour shifted completely, professional and focused. "All right, I'll do my best to give you the best cut possible." After what felt like quite a while, the barber finally spoke again. "My dear client, would you mind taking off your glasses?" Hearing that, Hung-suk grew embarrassed. "Sorry, my eyesight is really bad." But what the barber said next gave him unexpected confidence. "You have beautiful eyes. Try showing them instead of hiding them." And with that, he added, "All done." Everyone in the shop froze for a moment when they saw him, then gasped in disbelief. "Oh my God, what the hell?" All of a sudden, everything felt completely different. Without his glasses, his vision became blurry and unfamiliar. Staring at himself in the mirror, Hyung-suk was stunned. Is that really me?" The barber smiled kindly and said, "I did my best, though I'm not sure if it's exactly what you wanted." Still staring at the mirror, he relaxed and muttered in disbelief, "Did I actually become handsome?" The barber awkwardly turned away but added, "It might take some getting used to." Meanwhile, the other customers couldn't stop reacting. "Oh my God, should we call the police or something?" Out on the street, people's gazes felt strangely intense. Everyone seemed to be watching him. It was overwhelming, mixed with a strange sense of excitement. He glanced around thinking, "They're all looking at me. This is the first time." At that moment, he couldn't help but admire himself. Yet at the same time, he awkwardly thought, "Please, stop staring at me." Then suddenly, he spotted a mirror by the roadside. Curious about his new appearance, he stepped closer, but the moment he looked, He couldn't hold back his reaction. After changing his hairstyle, he felt like a completely different person, his confidence rising almost. Do I really look this different? In that moment, Hyung-suk felt like he had been given a new chance to become better, stronger, even a little intimidating. He started striking tough poses in the mirror, muttering to himself, "What, you want to fight? You want to die?" Then he smirked. "Wow, I actually look like I can throw a punch." Seeing how different he looked compared to his old self filled him with excitement. "Do you even know who I am?" he said under his breath, grinning. "Damn, I look dangerous." But suddenly he froze, startled by someone calling out nearby. He turned around in surprise, only to see a girl slowly walking toward him, instantly making his face flush red with embarrassment. At that distance, he couldn't control himself at all. His whole body started trembling from sheer embarrassment. He looked at her, a petite, beautiful girl with an innocent aura. She must have seen everything, he thought. It's fine. I'm a cicada now. Just stay calm and act cool. But seeing his strange behavior, she tilted her head, thinking, what's wrong with this guy? Hyung-suk forced a smile at her, a stiff, awkward attempt at what he thought was a charming, manly grin. But suddenly she flinched, startled, tilting her head as she looked at him. Huh? Mi-jin's expression quickly turned uneasy, even a little frightened, and yet he had no idea what was going on. Was she embarrassed? Suddenly a voice called out from the distance. A guy's voice. "Hey, Mi-jin, have you been waiting long?" The moment she saw who it was, her face lit up. "Oh, Jin-sung." Meanwhile, Hyung-suk froze in place as the realization hit him. Her boyfriend. Jin-sung glanced forward, his expression instantly souring. "Who's that? You know?" She quickly walked over and clung to his arm, speaking in a soft, coaxing tone. "It's nothing. Let's just go." But no matter how she tried to brush it off, he kept pressing. "Wait, who the hell is that guy? And why was he smiling at you?" Hearing that, Hyung-suk's heart began pounding so hard it felt like it might burst out of his chest. The two of them started arguing. "Why are you making such a big deal out of this?" she said. "Making a big deal? Hold on!" he snapped, his expression turning cold. And in that instant, Hyung-suk felt it. This was bad. His expression darkened with anger as he stepped toward Hyung-suk. "Hey, how old are you?" Mi-jin hurriedly grabbed his arm, flustered. "Just leave him alone. Let's go." The guy's presence was overwhelming, making Hyung-suk tremble as he forced out, 17. The guy clicked his tongue in annoyance. "Same age as me, huh?" The pressure alone was terrifying. Mi-jin kept trying to pull him away, but he coldly brushed her off. "You go on ahead." In the end, he finally turned to leave, but not before throwing a warning over his shoulder. "I'll remember your face. Watch yourself." Seeing how tense things had gotten, Mi-jin looked visibly uncomfortable. "Please, don't act like this." Before leaving, she turned back to glance at Hyung-suk, offering him a shy, apologetic smile. Standing out in the open under that wide sky, he suddenly felt suffocated, as if he couldn't breathe. And yet, at the same time, a strange relief washed over him. "I'm safe, saved again. Why is it always girls who end up pitying me?" But then all of a sudden, something clicked in his mind. Wait! Hyung-suk's expression slowly turned serious. "I've changed. I'm not the same person anymore." Thinking back to the way that girl looked at him. Right, she smiled. She must have found him interesting, and that Jin-sung guy, the way he glared at him, it was all just an act trying to look tough in front of her. In that moment, everything became clear. His confidence returned, fueled by a newfound resolve. If I just let things stay like this, I'll never truly change. The street was still lively, packed with people passing by in every direction. Suddenly, a voice called out, making the two of them turn around. "Excuse me!" Panting heavily, he ran after them, gasping for breath. "Ha! Ha!" Finally caught up. Then, trying to compose himself, he straightened up with newfound confidence. Now that he understood what was going on, he spoke calmly, as if it were all just a misunderstanding. "Wow! I actually look pretty cool right now." The two of them froze, watching to see what he would do next. Then Hyung-suk continued, "Would you like to grab some coffee together?" Jin-sung immediately started walking toward him, step by step, slow and deliberate. A calm, almost polite smile spread across his face as he looked straight at him. Then, with a hint of arrogance, he replied simply, "Sure." Hearing that, Hyung-suk couldn't hold it in. He let out a laugh, thinking things had gone his way. But Mi-jin still looked uneasy. "Jin-sung," she called out nervously. He brushed her off. "Let go. I'm not going to hit him. At that moment, Hyung-suk felt a surge of joy. He thought he had succeeded. Jin-sung then stepped closer and said slowly, "The three of us. Coffee." His presence no longer seemed aggressive, but strangely relaxed. "Yeah," Hyung-suk replied, but standing that close, he suddenly realized this guy was tall, way taller than him. And then everything in front of his eyes suddenly blurred. A fist came out of nowhere, slamming straight into Hyung-suk's face, sending a sharp wave of pain through him. Without saying a word, Jin-sung struck him again. Panic instantly flooded his body. "What the hell?" Then the cold warning came. "Don't mess with us." People nearby rushed over. "Hey! There's a fight!" Jin-sung glared down at him, casually rubbing his knuckles. "I told you to get lost." A crowd quickly formed, surrounding them and whispering. "What's going on?" Mi-jin cried out in panic. "Lee Jin-sung, stop!" Completely confused, Hyung-suk slowly lifted his head to look at him, stunned. "What?"